the one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 374, Sports Card Nation. I just had an espresso. I am rearing to go. Clemente Lisi is back for part two of our two-part episode, and today he is breaking down the World Cup and the soccer hobby market. No one does it better than Clemente, at least in the hobby. This guy wrote a book about the World Cup, which has been updated. He'll talk about that during today's episode. But tremendous, vast bastion of knowledge about past and current soccer. And the World Cup is on North American soil here in the U.S., I believe at 12 locations, Mexico, and Canada. So many of you listening might be taking in some of the action. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. It's a little bit longer than our typical, but I did not want to short the World Cup. It only comes around every 4 years, and it doesn't always come around to us here in the United States. So didn't want to shortchange this, and so we have a little bit longer episode today, but I think you'll find it very interesting. So with that being said, let's get the show started. All right, here is part two of our conversation with Clemente Lisi. In part one, we talked about the NHL and the hockey hobby. Today, we're going to talk the World Cup and the soccer market. And so they're kind of two separate episodes. So really not really part two, but back-to-back weeks of Clemente. So here you go. Let's get into some soccer talk. Coming to the United States, Mexico, and Canada, the first time that it's going to be in three countries at the same time. You mentioned to me before, it's the most it's ever been is two. The field expanding from 32 to 48 teams, which means more games. Let me. Your soccer is right in your wheelhouse. Do you like these changes with the expansion and more teams in more countries in the field?
It's a good question. My fear is that you may be watering down the event by bringing in countries that maybe are not going to be able to hold. And we'll find out if we get a couple of lopsided scores in the group stage. We'll see. Now the rationale is, the World Cup is for everybody, and it is fun to see countries who haven't qualified in 50 years or 60 years or maybe ever qualify. So that is fun. Like, for example, Haiti is qualified for the World Cup, and they haven't qualified since 1970. They've only played in one World Cup. So it's huge. It's a huge thing for a country that's in a lot of turmoil at the moment. So you have a lot of Haitian Americans. So for them, it's a sense of pride. It's huge. But are they going to lose 7-0 to Brazil in the group stage? And people are going to be like, what are they doing here? And so that's the push-pull. And for example, FIFA wants more countries from around the world to be at the World Cup. So they want more countries from Africa and Asia and South America, and that's great. But the number of European countries hasn't really moved up much. So, for example, you could see Haiti at the World Cup, and there's still 4 teams that need to qualify for the World Cup. And one of those 4 that could qualify in those 4 spots come March is Italy. We could have a World Cup without Italy in it, which would be a huge kind of loss.
That's insane to me.
Yeah,
now, I'm half Italian, and right. I know you're like that. I actually didn't even realize. I'm not just to show you how much I know, Clemente. Yeah. I just assumed they were in the field already.
No, they're not. And so Italy hasn't qualified for the last 2 World Cups, which is already a staggering thing.
Yeah,
considering it's a 4-time world champion, and it's a country shaped like a boot, so they have no choice but to be a soccer powerhouse. But also, I remember '94 World Cup, and '94. I'm sure you remember. New York hosted. The old Giant Stadium hosted games, including the famous Italy-Ireland game, right? And so, which Italy lost 1-0, and all my Irish fans remind me of that every day. But you had Italy training in New Jersey. You have a huge Italian American community. So not having in Italy, for example, could hurt the tournament. And then you have Uzbekistan was in for the first time. People are like, why? Why do we have this? Now, I understand it's also a political thing. FIFA, to maintain its power, every FIFA member gets one vote in the presidential election. So the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, which a lot of people may have heard that name because he's become like Trump's best friend. He's always at the White House and they're always hanging out. They have like a bromance going. He wants to get elected. He knows that Italy gets the same number of votes as Haiti. They get one vote each. And so it does help to it's like the electoral college of FIFA. It's nice to dole out, World Cup spots to countries that are smaller or that never been in the World Cup before, because they'll vote for you. And so that's a power thing internally.
So he'll just say like, this team's in. Don't you have
no,
to?
No,
like,
it's a qualifying process. But the qualifying process could be tipped by saying, hey, Latin America, you have 10 countries in Latin America. We'll give you, instead of 3 spots, we'll give you 7. So literally almost everybody, it's like everybody makes the playoffs kind of thing. And so, so just so you know, and the listeners know, there's 204 FIFA members, 204, and only 32 went to the World Cup before. Now only 48 make it, but still 204. So do the math. A lot of teams don't make the World Cup, right? So
there'll be approximately 160
that don't make the World Cup and
that aren't participating. That want.
Yeah, and when those countries not participating are, I don't know, Tunisia, which they're in the World Cup, but let's say, which is in Africa, let's say they don't make the World Cup, no one's really going to notice, but people in that country. But if Italy doesn't make the World Cup, or in Argentina or Brazil, it's noticeable. People are going to notice that. And so I'm sure FIFA wants Italy in there because, and I don't want to harp on Italy, it's become a big controversy now. It's going from 64 games.
Well, let me ask you this: why they can still qualify? Why don't we know like in the USA's group? There's still one more team to be announced.
Yes.
Why don't we know the full 48 now? Like, why isn't it?
Because what they did, because the qualifying ended in November, and then they had a World Cup draw in December, which I'm sure a lot of people watched. And the issue with that was, we still have to play kind of a playoff, like a play-in. Look, it's to create more, it's to create more drama, to have more teams qualifying, and you have to expand the qualifiers. Because, in soccer, national teams are not the only game in town. Most players are earning their money on club teams. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Juventus, AC Milan. That's where the game is actually played on the club level. The national teams is like the Olympics. This is a kind of a special kind of thing. So you pointed out correctly. The U.S. is in Group D with Paraguay, Australia, and then it says the winner of UEFA Path C. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? So there's like there's 4 teams vying to become that one team. All indications point that it will be Turkey. Now they could be upset and they can lose. If Turkey gets into that group, the U.S. group will be. I think the U.S. got a pretty good group. I think it's a pretty easy group for the U.S. considering they could have gotten some tough teams. Like
Let me ask you this: how are the groups? Who decides it's U.S., Paraguay, Australia, and let's say Turkey is the? How does that? Is it like? Is it random? Is it?
Yeah. So it's a good point. So there's something called the FIFA rankings that come out every month, which are a little bit like tennis rankings, a little bit like college football rankings. Every month, based on results, they rank the teams. The top 8 teams are the group leader. Okay. So, for example, like a Brazil, a Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Spain, and then you have Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. Those teams cannot play each other in the group stage. They can only meet in a knockout round because they're really good. You wouldn't want to put Spain and Germany in the same group.
They're trying to create parity that way.
Exactly.
You don't have 3 powerhouses in one group.
Exactly. And then because it's better for the for the show to have the better teams not in the knockout stage. Then you have what teams that are in pot 2, pot 3, and pot 4. So every group is put together. The U.S. is pot 1, and they come out. Then pot 2 is like a Paraguay, a Morocco, Japan, whatever. Then you pull them out, and so you end up with. So it's orchestrated. Now, when the World Cup was smaller, there was a possibility that you could get a tough group. But the more teams that are in it and the more parity you create, the more watered down it becomes. So, for example, it doesn't mean that on paper Germany can win their group, but who knows? They could be an upset and they lose to Ecuador, which is the same group as Germany, and there's an upset that could happen. But you have in Group E with Germany, you have a team, small island in the Caribbean called Curacao. They're at the World Cup for the first time. It's a tiny country. This is the same country that Wayne Gretzky mispronounced Caraco during the World Cup draw, which was kind of hilarious. And I was actually
I believe Andrew Jones might be from there or some.
Curacao. Yeah.
So I don't know. There is a baseball player I think that came out.
And they're good at baseball. It's a former Dutch colony. It's a vacation spot for many people. It's a country that people have never heard of, and they're like, "Wow, they're at the World Cup." Yes, Italy might not be there, but Curacao is there. So don't worry, rest assured.
And here's the thing, like not to cut you off too, Clemente. Like you mentioned, like I know Italy missed the last couple World Cups.
Yeah,
they can make this one.
Yeah,
but why do we not know yet? Like when the BCS college football like releases the 16 teams in the playoff, they're all released at one time. Here it is.
Yeah.
College World Series. Everyone's playing. Here's the field now. You got out of the regional. Why is it not all known at once?
Because what normally happens is the qualifiers end in November of the year before the World Cup, and then in December there's the draw, which happened. Right in December we had the draw, but because there's more teams qualifying, there wasn't enough time to get all these teams in. So what ended up happening is FIFA was like, okay, Europe, you will have your playoffs, the best second place teams, because only the group winners of the qualifiers qualified automatically. The best number 2 teams were thrown in this pot where they had to basically fight it out. And so they're like, you're going to play in March, because FIFA has what they call international windows. There's one in September, one in October, one in November, one in March, one in April. They have to spread this out. So unfortunately, now when I talk to the Panini people, for example, this tripped them up, because Panini was like, we were ready to put our sticker book in January if we, this Panini Stickers World Cup book, which is super popular. But they're like, we can't do that. We have to wait until at least April or May, because we need to figure out which 4 teams are left and then get them in the book. Now, if you're Panini, you probably already have, there's 4 teams that make it, but there's like 16 teams left. I'm sure they've created pages for all of them, and then they're just going to throw out the ones that don't make it and put the ones that, but that delayed, because the people at Panini America are like, people love the sticker book. It would have been awesome to have the book out in December or January, and now we have to wait. And so it tripped up Panini as well. And then trips up Panini Prism, which is a big World Cup set people want to collect. You have to wait until the World Cup, or maybe even after the World Cup, to be able to sell this box, because you want to be able to get those teams there too. So it does hurt in terms of cards.
Is it going back to what happens on the pitch? Is it a disadvantage to a team that qualifies late, or an advantage, or neither?
It's a disadvantage because you're in pot 4. So, for example, Italy could have ended up in the Germany group. If let's say Italy qualifies, they could have ended up in the Germany group or in the Spain group. Now, luckily, they could end up in the Canada group, which is super interesting, because Canada's first game and Canada is a co-host. Canada would play. It would be Canada, Italy in Toronto. Now, that would be an amazing game, considering how many Italians live in Toronto. But Italy has to qualify. It could be another country, and then it's like, okay, that's not going to happen. So that Canada versus blank team game, a lot of people, the ticket prices are going up on that, because it's Canada and they're home, sure. But people are speculating it could be Italy.
It should be Italy.
It should be Italy. Could be Italy. And Italy, Canada. So Italy if Italy were to qualify, they would get a pretty easy group, because they'd be in a group with Canada, and Canada, with Qatar and Switzerland. It's a pretty easy group for a team that just snuck in. You know what I mean? As opposed to like, oh, you're in the Spain group with Uruguay and Saudi Arabia. It's like, oh, this gets complicated. They could end up in the U.S. group, right? Which would have made the U.S. group all of a sudden really hard, because it's like, great. It's like we talked about hockey before. It's like, a number 8 team could have had a pretty lousy regular season, but if that team is the Oilers, you don't want lightning in a bottle. You don't want to play them in the first round or even later. You're like, oh boy. So it's interesting what could happen. So look, there's still a lot of variables out there. The groups are made, the 8 groups are set, but there's still a couple of teams that need to qualify, 4 more teams. And then June 11th, you have the opening game in Mexico City. And then, it's a 5-week extravaganza. Everyone knows what the World Cup is. I think the World Cup is the biggest sporting event in the world, but I think it will be made even bigger by the fact that most of the games are going to be played in the U.S. And anything that happens in the U.S. is magnified. And people who are not soccer fans are World Cup fans.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I would probably fit that description. I'm not necessarily following soccer all the time, but But when the World Cup was played, I watch it. And I'll
Right.
probably watch even more, being here that we're one of the host countries.
Right.
Is that a rule too? If you're the host country, you automatically qualify. Is that how?
Yeah. So the
Not
U.S.
necessarily.
Yeah, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico automatically
Yeah.
qualified.
Okay.
That's
That's
a
what I thought. I wanted
yeah,
to check.
yeah. The positive on that is like, well, yeah, you host it, so you have to be there. But the negative is you don't play a lot of competitive games leading up to it. So Brazil and Argentina and all these countries had to slog it out to get to
Yeah.
the show. The U.S. didn't have to play games that meant
Yeah.
much. A lot of friendlies, exhibition games. It's hard to
Yeah.
create chemistry. It's hard to create competitiveness there. So there's a
They're not going to
disadvantage
be
to
as
that.
battle tested as some of these
Potentially,
other.
potentially not. Now you're hoping that, in essence, a national team in soccer is basically like your all-star team. Any American playing anywhere in the world, as long as they're an American citizen, can play for the US. So it's the coach's job to go out and say, you know what, who are my best 26 guys? Who are the best players that are American in the world? And, the best American player right now is Christian Pulisic, who actually plays in
Yeah.
Italy. He plays for AC Milan, and which is in of itself an amazing thing to have an American player playing professional soccer in Italy. So that tells you where American players have gone, how far we've come as a
Yeah.
country. And, 25 years ago, 30 years ago at the World Cup in 94, most of those guys were college guys. They didn't play for anybody.
Yeah.
So a lot's changed.
So you mentioned tickets, and you mentioned like speculating with maybe a Canada-Italy matchup early
Yeah.
in Toronto. You mentioned tickets, kind of crazy stuff going on with tickets and getting them and the prices. Kind of, I told you kind of to save it when you were going to tell me, but I said, hey, let's save it for the show. So what's going on when it comes to buying and being able to buy these tickets so you can watch these matches?
Yeah. So it's been a bit of a disaster for a couple of reasons. One is that soccer is a global sport. So people around the world are not just consumers of soccer, they understand the game, but they also know that in Spain or in Italy or in Brazil, they're pretty affordable, to go to see a World Cup in those countries. But even just regular league games, we're talking about 60, 70, $80 a ticket is considered a lot of money in some countries. In the US, we have to understand that people are willing to pay a premium to go to events. And I saw this a couple of years ago. Everyone here knows what happened with Taylor Swift, right? The mania around Taylor Swift and the ticket prices. I mean, so much so that it became a congressional investigation. So when that happened a couple of years ago, I remember saying to myself, wait until the World Cup gets, because if anything's bigger than Taylor Swift, it's the World Cup. Okay. And the World Cup came, and everyone around the world, it's not just Americans who want to buy tickets. People around the world want to buy tickets because they'll fly anywhere. If the World Cup was in at the North Pole, people would fly to the North Pole to watch it. It's that popular. Okay. But people are not willing to spend what's the cost of these tickets. Face value for some of these tickets, we're talking about $2,000, $3,000 for a group stage game, when the price for that should be basically $60. And it's not $60. It's $300.
Who's in charge of the original ticket sale? I know a lot of these are
FIFA.
maybe on
Yeah,
sec.
FIFA.
Is,
So FIFA
so
controls.
who's at fault? Is it their fault for
Yeah,
not?
it's FIFA. FIFA has control, and if FIFA's figured out, hey, you know what? Americans are willing to pay money, so it's a cash grab for us. We can charge whatever we want, and people will buy. Now, people around the world are like, wait, why are these tickets $300 when the finalists should be $300, not a group stage game that has very little meaning, or could have very little meaning? So FIFA has also created a portal where you can resell your tickets, and when you resell your tickets, they take 15%. So FIFA makes out like a bandit here. Not only have they escalated the prices, I mean, they're charging $100 for parking passes. Okay. And the secondary market is even worse. They're selling tickets for $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. Okay. To go see a final, a quarterfinal, a semifinal. People in the New Jersey area, because the final will be on July 19th at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. People are Airbnbs for that weekend are $15,000 a night. Now, will they get that money? Maybe not. But people are out, hotel rooms in New York are $2,000 a night that weekend, because everyone knows you want to be at the biggest game on earth. It happens every 4 years. We'll charge whatever we want. Now, will they get those prices? We don't know. But if you get a France-Argentina final, you may get people who are crazy enough. I mean, 4 years ago in Qatar, and I was there were people from Argentina that flew to Qatar no ticket. They're just like, I want to be here. There are people that told me they sold their car to go there. I mean, so we can laugh about it. It's funny. My fear is that the real fans will get shut out, and that people around the world will do anything to get there, and they'll sell off their car. They'll max out their
brokers.
They'll max out their credit card, whatever they got to do to get there, because it's every 4 years. It's a religion to these people. It's crazy, but I worry that FIFA is taking advantage of that because they realize the American market is very, and look, let's be honest, having the World Cup in America is great because we have great roads and great hotels and great facilities. I mean, who doesn't want to come here on vacation and watch a couple of soccer games, right?
Listen, people want to come here not for even soccer matches. They just want to come in.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, exactly. And so FIFA knows, I mean, this past summer, they had the FIFA Club World Cup. You might have heard of that, where you had all these club teams playing because basically it was a dry run. It was like they wanted to see, could the stadiums hold up? Could the U.S. host a large scale event? Give it a bit of a dry run, and they did fine. I mean, there were some issues with the ticket prices, because the ticket prices were basically the demand. If demand went up, the price went up. If the demand went down, the price went down. So some World Cup games, the prices kind of flatlined. But for some games, like in the group stage, in New York especially, there's France-Senegal and France-Norway, two big games that are happening at MetLife in the group stage. And the tickets for that are in the thousands already. Even though face value, it's about 300, which is already a lot of money. But the brokers now, because once the schedule came out, so just so you're aware and the listeners are aware, people were buying tickets back in September. They were buying tickets to games. They didn't even know who was going to play. People were paying $300.
Speculation,
people were paying $300 to watch game 46 at MetLife Stadium. Who's going to play in it? We don't know. Just to have
a lottery ticket.
Exactly. So the whole thing from the very beginning, and this started back in September with what they call the Visa pre-sale. So you have to have a Visa card to be able to buy tickets, and they've had various stages. Now in New York, we have a new mayor, Zoran Mamdani. He's a pretty big soccer fan. He's complained about ticket prices. In the past at other World Cups, FIFA would give tickets away to local people like school children, and because they need to fill the stadiums, right? And it's also a goodwill gesture. But in America, between the visitors and then we forget how many people in this country are soccer fans. And if they're not soccer fans, if Italy's playing at Giant Stadium, you're gonna go, even if you're half Italian and you're like, hey, I don't watch soccer every week, but this is my country of my people. I want to go watch it, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of national pride that's attached to these teams. So FIFA knows all this, and so hopefully things kind of loosen a bit. Maybe there'll be games where there'll be fewer seats. Maybe they give some away. I'm hoping, because back in '94 they did give out free tickets to soccer clubs and soccer camps, but at the time FIFA was worried that the U.S. wasn't a good enough market for soccer. I think we were able to prove them wrong in '94. And '94 is still considered the most successful World Cup ever, because basically every game was a sellout. Will that happen this time? We shall see. 104 games is a lot, considering that the last World Cup was 64 games. So
tell me if you agree with this. I think there'll be sellouts. Now, will they get all what their asking price, like right off the top? Maybe not. They'll have to come down. But I think there should be, the demand should be enough where everything has a price at some,
But Germany, Curacao isn't going to get the same price as France, Norway. It's just not going to happen. And then once you get to the knockout stage, all those games really matter. I think the knockout stage is where the money really is. And just so you know, and the listeners know, Mexico and Canada will host games as well. But once you get to the knockout round, all those games are in the U.S. So the U.S. is hosting the majority of these games. And that way it's considered very much a U.S.-led World Cup. But because you have so many teams and so many games, you really got to spread it out across Canada and Mexico. The truth is, though, if you had just kept it in the U.S. could have hosted those many games. There's a lot of cities that did not get games. Washington, D.C. is not hosting the World Cup. Chicago is not hosting the World Cup. Las Vegas
they weren't selected. Were they not selected, or they didn't put in a bid like they did?
So most cities put in bids and didn't get them. Chicago didn't actually put in a bid, but Washington, D.C., it was actually Washington, Baltimore. They wouldn't have the games in Baltimore. They did not get they were able to get games. But there was a lot of maneuvering. For example, Jerry Jones really wanted to get games in Dallas, and he got them. And Dallas is it's a great stadium. These are all NFL stadiums. So it's a great stadium in Dallas. Dallas wanted to host the final, and they didn't get it. but they also wanted to be able to have games where teams didn't have to travel all over the country. So for example, there's games in Boston, New York, and Philly. So you can keep teams pretty close. They can travel by train and not create, because we have time differences here. Players would be jet lagged. But for example, Boston was not an original team that original city anyone thought was going to get the World Cup. But Bob Kraft put a little pressure on FIFA, and they're like, "All right, Bob, we'll make this work for you. We'll pick Boston and not some other place," right? So a lot of these NFL owners see the potential in soccer. Some of them own MLS teams. They definitely want their NFL stadiums to host World Cup games. So, Jerry Jones is friendly with FIFA. Bob Kraft is friendly with FIFA. The people that, own the Giants are friendly with, FIFA, and MetLife got chosen to host the final, which I think is fair because I can't think of a more international city than New York. And to host a final would be amazing. People should remember it back in '94. The World Cup final was held at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. So New York didn't host the final. They hosted a semifinal.
West Coast, and now it's the East Coast turn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I thought Dallas might get it because I still think in the mind of many Europeans, they don't know America. They just know New York, LA, Miami, and maybe Dallas, right? They don't really know other cities. They never heard of Philadelphia or Boston or Kansas City, for example, which will be hosting games as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about, you got your traditional favorites, right? You kind of, I don't want to say handicapping the event, but like, who are, obviously you got your leaders of each of these groups, right? But as someone who knows a lot of these rosters, who is it going to be traditional powerhouses that we should expect? I know you mentioned, for everyone here in the U.S., that we got a pretty good draw with our group. We might be able to fight our way out of that and survive in advance. But who are like coming in? Who are the favorites in your mind? Is it kind of the chalk, what we would normally say, or not necessarily?
Yeah, so I'd put them in tiers. So I would say the teams that are super favorite would be Argentina, defending champion. Then you have France, which they were runners-up last time. Spain, which are the current European champions. And then you have England and Brazil. Okay. So these are the teams we're looking at that are in the favorite category. Then you have the dark horse category. It's like, oh, what's a team that could emerge that no one expects? In the dark horse category, I look at Morocco, who finished fourth last time, surprise fourth. They're a very good team. A lot of their players play in Europe. The Netherlands, which is another team that finished runners-up twice in history, the World Cup. Oh, 3 times, I should say. 3 times runners-up, never won a World Cup. They're always in play. A team like Germany, who's been traditionally very good, but they've been on a bit of a low last couple of years. They could emerge. So you're looking at the usuals with maybe a sprinkling of some newer teams. Let's not forget the last 2 World Cups. Croatia did very well. Croatia got to the final in 2018 and then got pretty deep semifinals in 2022. But they were an aging team. But that's a team that emerged out of nowhere. And then it goes through cycles, of course. And because the World Cup is every 4 years, it's hard to build momentum year after year, right? So you can't build. It's not like a playoff team that you build momentum. You rebuild. You don't rebuild. I mean, you have to just hope that your country is producing young players, young enough talent, and that the coach, who has all the power in the world to pick the players he wants and creates enough team chemistry over the 4-year period between World Cups to be able to then field a team for 5 weeks. You got to win 9 games to get to the final and the whole thing.
Yeah.
You can get hot, like in the knockouts, you get hot and you can get to the final. It can happen. But the World Cup has only had 8 winners in 96 years. So it's not easy to win the World Cup. Only 8 countries have ever won it. So it's a very exclusive club. And so I mentioned these teams, the teams I mentioned in the favorite category. I mentioned Brazil, Argentina, France, Spain. These countries have all won a World Cup at least once. So it's going to be the usual suspects. And the truth is, you almost want the usual suspects because it does make for a better show. And it will be, I should point out, probably the last World Cup for Messi, the last World Cup for Ronaldo. These are guys who've been playing for 20 plus years. And so that'll be interesting to see.
Do you think let me ask you this, you can't answer for them, but just playing, putting on your speculators. Do you think, I know Messi kind of at one point was like saying that's probably it. Do you think the fact that it's here in the United States kind of influenced their decision to give it one more go this go around or not?
I think
not really.
I think for Messi, yes, because Messi plays here in Miami in the U.S. and he's made the U.S. his home and he's been extraordinarily good at 36 years old. He can still breeze past 20-year-olds with ease. Now people would say, well, he's doing that in America. I still think if he was playing in Europe, he could probably play at a pretty high level. So, I mean, he reminds me, him being here reminds me of when Pele came here in the 70s and when Beckham came in the in the 2000s. You have this idea of like, we have the best player in the world, and he's coming to a market, the US, and he's helping to grow the game. So I do think he wants to finish that out. He wants to play at a World Cup for Argentina in the US, and then maybe finish his 2 years in Miami, and then maybe retire at 39 years old and 40 years old, and he can retire. Ronaldo's already at 40, 41. He's already pretty old for soccer anyway. But the guy reminds me of Tom Brady. He's in great physical shape. He's got great mentality. But it'll be interesting to see, can he play for Portugal? Can he start? Will he be on the bench? He's not a team player. Ronaldo is very much into himself. Can he sacrifice himself for the team? If he gets subbed out, will he throw a tantrum? Like, we'll see can he play the full 90 minutes? Maybe not. But I think it'll be interesting to see what he can do. And come spring, the U.S. will play Portugal in a pre-World Cup friendly, as they call it, a game that's an exhibition game. So it'll be curious to see Ronaldo come here. Ronaldo did recently. Now, Ronaldo also plays in Saudi Arabia. So Ronaldo and Messi both left European soccer a while ago because they realize they're getting older, they're getting slower, and there's a lot more money to be had outside of Europe, in this case, in the Middle East. And they want to be ambassador. So I think they're playing one more time, just one more go at it. And we'll see what happens. I think if you remember 4 years ago when Argentina won the World Cup, that was an amazing World Cup final. Remember, 3-3. They went to penalty kicks. And Messi not only won the World Cup for the first time, but I think pretty much crowned himself.
That game had me. Listen, I'm not a soccer guy per se, but that had me on the edge of my seat. Like I was thinking to myself, it stinks that someone's going to lose this game.
Right.
Like both these teams should win. Like I don't, you can't split a trophy in half or, but like I felt bad. Like I didn't have a particular rooting interest, but I knew one team was going to lose, and whoever it was going to be, I was going to feel bad, like just so enthralling, and they were leaving it all out there. Just momentum swings one way, back the other way, and I'm like, it's too bad someone's got to feel the pain of not coming out of this victorious. But that's the beauty of it too, at the end of the day.
No, and that's absolutely true. But when you get to that level, you get to a final, you want that game to be that game. You want there to be, because these are the two best teams. Now, oftentimes you don't get that in soccer because teams are tired. They've played 7-8 games in a tight window. And also all the pressure. Sometimes the championship game isn't always the best game of the tournament, but it's nice when it works out that way. And we should point out that on the other side of Messi was Kylian Mbappe, who will be back for France. He's much younger at 24. He could break a few World Cup records. I totally see him, doing something with France. Maybe he already won a World Cup in 2018 when he was like basically 19 years old. So he's already won a World Cup at a very young age. So these are players who are primed, and in these players I'm mentioning, Ronaldo, Messi, Mbappe. These are all players who have the biggest card values, anyways. In the
they're the legends of the game, and even Mbappe, even at a young age of 24, is like, I know who. A lot of people know who.
Someone's at my door. I've got to get that. Be right back.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
Sports Card Nation has returned.
Who's the hot name that's the real young player to watch, in his teens, let's say? Is there somebody?
There's a player that plays for Spain named Lamine Yamal, who is he's only 18 years old. He was 16 when they won the European Championship with Spain. He was 16. He was a kid, and he was playing like he was 25. So he's 18 now, 19. I think he's going to have a great World Cup. He plays for Spain. So Spain, again, one of the favorites. He's another name you see a lot at card shows. People like to speculate on his rookie cards, which are fairly new. And he is a great player. You just tell by the way they move, the way they run, the way they play, the maturity they bring. And in soccer, you have a 16, 17-year-old playing against 29-year-olds, and he's gliding past these guys. So some guys have something special. Again, like in hockey, though, these guys are scoring goals. They're the alpha male. They're the guys on the team that everybody wants to be. And so, it's not a goalkeeper, it's not a defender, it's the guy scoring the goals. Again, this is what gets people excited in the hobby. It's what gets people excited in sports and soccer. He's putting up big goals. He's doing great things. He's making great moves. And so he's the one younger player, even though he's been playing for a few years now. It'll be his first World Cup, though. So people are going to really want his sticker, his first sticker. They're going to want all that. And look, if Spain go far, win a World Cup even, then I think, he's going to be the next Mbappe. Yeah. He'll slide right in there in terms of popularity.
Now, we know like the soccer market, the soccer hobby market's going to get a bump from the World Cup. I think even more so being here on North American soil in Canada and Mexico, but having it here. Since the last World Cup, how would you describe, a synopsis of what the soccer market, hobby-wise, has done? Obviously you get the World Cup bump, but how has it been between last World Cup and leading into this World Cup?
Yeah, so back in 2018, there was really no soccer card market. There were soccer cards, and they were okay, and there were stickers. The stickers are what people wanted in Europe anyway. COVID, soccer blew up. Then the World Cup in 2022 was in the middle of the COVID thing. So they kind of had a big bump. And I want to say that it was a bump that kind of stabilized, but it did put soccer from being almost non-existent to being in a place where any show I go to, whether it's a small show, a regional show, the national, the expo, whatever, soccer's a big deal. Like there's soccer only dealers. Even people that sell multi-sport will sell soccer cards. The big names, right? So soccer's become more integrated, I think, into the hobby, more so than even Formula One, which kind of had that big spike and then I think it kind of died, right? But soccer is there. I think when you talk about the hobby, you're talking about 5 sports, really. You're talking about the 4 major American sports, and soccer, I think, is in that category now. And you have card shows now all over Europe. You have the London card show, which I went to a couple of years ago. You have shows in all over Europe. Europeans now are buying, soccer cards. Topps is making soccer cards. Fanatics is super interested in soccer. They would love to have the FIFA license. So I don't know if you know, but Fanatics Fest this year will take place during the World Cup final weekend, which will be in New York. So, and FIFA had a huge booth at the last Fanatics Fest last year. The one negative of that is that it puts Fanatics Fest and the National literally within 2.5 weeks of each other, which is not ideal, right? But I don't think Fanatics cares about the National or anybody else. They just care about what they're doing, and they care about working with FIFA and working with other partners, right? So I say that to say that's how big soccer has become. That Fanatics Fest is like, yeah, we'd love to have our show in June every year in New York, but we're going to do it in July this year because the World Cup final is there, and they're going to have a viewing party, and it's going to be FIFA is going to have a big booth again. It's really going to be fully integrated. So if you're coming to New York for the final and you're in New York that weekend, you can pop into Fanatics Fest and maybe buy merchandise, memorabilia, soccer cards. That's all part of it. So Topps is super interested in it. Panini still has the World Cup license. They still have the FIFA license. So they're going to produce Panini Prism and a bunch of other, Donruss, and they're going to produce a bunch of cards this year that are going to have a lot of relevance, I think, because it's a World Cup year. There's definitely a bump that is already starting to emerge. And then people are going back and trying to buy the old stuff. They try to buy the Messi rookies, the Ronaldo rookie. I think the Messi rookie card has become almost as iconic as the Gretzky rookie or the Mickey Mantle. If you're a soccer fan or a multi-sport collector, you want the Messi rookie because he's got a card. It's from 2004. It came out in Spain. It was put out by Panini. But there's lots of examples of it. I mean, every show I go to, I inevitably run into this Messi rookie card. It's not hard to find, but the prices have been going up. And the better the grade, the better it is. I still have a fantasy that one day someone is going to find in a warehouse in Spain, 100,000 of these Messi cards and go, oh, look, there's a ton of these sitting in a box, and will that devalue it? I don't know. But because it's European, because it's only issued in Spain, it's hard to find in America. This is a card that you literally 10 years ago didn't even know existed. And now every golden auction, you see it. Every article about soccer cards, you see that card photographed in there. So it has become I think the Messi rookie is in the same collection as the Mickey Mantle rookie and the Gretzky rookie and the Tom Brady rookie. It's like the GOATs. If you want the GOATs, you have to go out and get that card.
Well, if you ever want to sell one of the 10 you have, let me know.
I luckily have one, but I bought it back in 2018 when
Yeah.
it was worth hundreds of dollars. Now it's worth thousands of dollars. But,
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing where I enjoyed buying soccer in the 2017, 2018, because nobody was really buying. And now I think soccer may be even hotter than hockey in terms of cards, because the people that collect soccer cards are really rabid, and that fan base is growing larger and larger. And like I said, you have guys at the National now. For example, at the last National where I saw you, because soccer collectors didn't think there was enough soccer at the National, they actually had their own show in Chicago the same weekend at night. So I went to it one night and I couldn't believe there were like 50 vendor tables selling soccer. And it was held at an indoor soccer facility about 30 minutes away. I took an Uber, I went over there, and it was cool. It was like, wow, it was like fake turf, tables everywhere. And, and so there is definitely a community that's grown. You would not have seen that 5 years, not at all.
Yeah. Do you think, obviously, there's going to be a bump with it being here on North American soil? Do you think it'll be a bigger one just on that alone, just from that alone, comparatively speaking to the last World Cup? And a two-pronged question. Do we know where the next one is after this one or not yet?
We do. The next one will be in. So I'll take that question first. So the next World Cup will be in 2030, and that's going to be the 100-year anniversary of the World Cup. So that's going to be a big deal in of itself. Okay. Now the first World Cup was held in Uruguay, very small Latin American country, so they could not host a World Cup that's this big. They just couldn't. Right. So what they're going to do is they're going to have a few first round games in Uruguay, Argentina, and Peru as an homage to that first World Cup.
Yeah. That's cool.
Then they're going to have the rest of the tournament in Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. So yes, the next World Cup will be hosted by 6 countries. Okay. And then the next World Cup after that, 2034, will be held entirely in Saudi Arabia, which, if you know anything about Saudi Arabia, they've gotten into the sports market big time, soccer and the golf and everything. Now, we don't know this yet, but I am already speculating that World Cup will be like Qatar. It'll be too hot to have in the summer, and they'll have another Winter World Cup, and which we all lived through in November and December of 2022. And ultimately, I didn't think it was that bad watching soccer on Thanksgiving. I got to tell you, I got to be honest. So the European leagues didn't like having a month break in between, but
we could watch football and then football.
Yeah, exactly, which people did. You I don't know if you remember, but on Black Friday, U.S. England on Black Friday was a pretty fun game, and it was 0-0. And to this day, England has never beaten the U.S. at a World Cup. So we have. So the next 2 World Cups are spoken for. Then after that, we don't know. But the World Cup is becoming harder and harder to host because it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's really hard for countries to do it alone because the U.S. is a big country, and Saudi Arabia is a big country, but a country like Italy or Germany or England couldn't host a World Cup that was that big. So I'd be curious to see what happens with the World Cup. There's also speculation that the World Cup might go from 48 to 64 teams.
That was my next question. Like, are we going to see more expansion?
It's possible. And then to pick up the other question, we could see more expansion in the future, which who knows how well people will take that. The original idea was not to expand the World Cup, but to have it every 2 years. And people really didn't like that. And so FIFA was like, okay, we won't have it every 2 years, but we're going to make it bigger. So people were like, okay. The other question you had, will the World Cup give soccer cards a bigger bump? I think because they're held
being here. Rather than
I think yes. Now, I think the World Cup could be held anywhere and people would still watch it on TV. The World Cup is really a television event at this point, like the Olympics. So it doesn't matter where you hold it. But having it here does matter because Panini and Upper Deck and Topps, all these companies are going to try to produce as much soccer as they can just to meet the demand. You might get new collectors. And you have to remember back in 94, Upper Deck, they put out that 94 World Cup set that has become kind of iconic among soccer fans because it was kind of the first real World Cup card set, and Upper Deck put that out and which produced some pretty famous cards of some pretty good soccer players. But in addition to that, they made these special cards of Wayne Gretzky and Michael Jordan. There's a Michael Jordan card dunking a soccer ball. Like there is a Joe Montana soccer card. There's a Reggie Jackson. These are all guys that Upper Deck had under contract back in the 90s, right? So that set became iconic as a result of the fact that the World Cup was being held here, and Upper Deck was like, well, we got to put out a set, because the World Cup is here. It's going to be a big deal. So I think that will happen. I mean, Panini America is already positioning itself to try to. I mean, I noticed 4 years ago with the stickers, literally every place I went to in New York City, even Walgreens had the stickers. And before that, they never had them. So I have to imagine that the World Cup being here, the buzz of it being just next door is going to be huge, especially if you live in a big American city and you're going to see people in the street celebrating, you're going to see people at bars. It's going to be, it's kind of like
their jerseys.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be like March Madness on steroids.
Yeah.
It's going to be huge. And I think it's going to help the hobby because naturally young people, older people might say, oh, I'm really enjoying this sport. I do baseball cards. Maybe I could do soccer now. I can collect some of my favorite players I'm watching at this tournament, right? And so I think there'll be a lot of product out there for everybody come the summer.
So the last time you were on, which was like you said a while ago, too long. Any traction on my rule suggestion? One of my pet peeves is like a guy gets like tripped and anyone can shoot the penalty shot. Like I think it's whoever. I think it should be whoever's the penalty occurs on has the penalty shot. You can't just have like Messi take every one. Like in basketball, if you foul, you always want to foul the guy who has the worst free throw percentage because there's more likely he's going to miss. I think it should be like that in soccer. Like, that guy has to be the one that tries to kick the penalty shot one-on-one with the goalie.
It would. So no, there's been zero traction on what you said. though I will admit when you mentioned that on the last time I was on, which was a long time ago, but I do remember you saying that, and a light bulb went off in my head. I thought, you know what? I never heard anyone say that, and I've never heard anyone say it since. But I think it's a genius idea because the probability of a kicker scoring is very high. It's like 60-70% in favor of the kicker. So it's almost like a goal. Now we've seen players miss and we've seen goalies make saves, but the odds are stacked against the goalie, right? So it would be amazing if someone gets tripped and let's say they're not a penalty kick specialist. Okay, so if they have to take the kick, it makes it more exciting, number one. So I like your idea, number one. Number two,
well, here's the other thing, real quick too. Yeah. And listen, Messi and Ronaldo and the greats of the game of soccer are great without. I'm not saying they're not great, but this is some of the numbers get inflated because these are counted as obviously goals.
It's so padded. Sure.
Yeah, it's like an empty net goal in hockey. Like he scored, but
it wasn't hard.
Yeah, it was like it was at the end of the game. They had trying to get an extra guy,
and they pulled the goalie.
I get the goalie's there, but he's getting a stop play shot, right?
Right.
Like so, they might have 400 goals in their career. How many were like on like to me? I take more pride. Or I think it's more exciting an in-play goal where, it's set up and the guy passes or heads it and then or bicycle kick,
Right.
I just think
like they all work the same.
Yeah, I think like if you're the one that like gets tripped and you do a face plant, you should at least get to reap the rewards of drawing that penalty.
I've seen games where someone gets tripped and then every team's got that one guy who kicks the penalty kicks. And usually it's like a Messi or Ronaldo, but I've seen games where players have gotten into fights because they're like, I want to kick it. No, you kick. It's like because they want the goal, or maybe they're in a scoring drought and it'll maybe help them. So you're right. The idea that you're committed to the guy that got tripped, that would be fun, and that's never been floated. But I still think it's a good idea because it would be interesting. And you're right. The Messis of the world wouldn't be able to pad their numbers. But on top of that, you'd have some. A penalty kick wouldn't be such a sure thing if some defender got tripped in the box and it's like, oh, he's got to take the kick and he's not that, he's a little wobbly on kick. Because some players don't do this. It's not their specialty. They don't do PKs, right?
Well, it's like in hockey, right? Yeah. If a guy's got a breakaway and the defenseman trips him, he has to take the shot. They don't like if it happens to Oilers, McDavid doesn't come out and like, okay, it's me. Get off the ice. I got this.
It's almost like a pinch hitter or like a pinch runner. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna swap them. I'm gonna put my best guy to take it. It's interesting, and FIFA does do experiments at youth tournaments and minor tournaments with rules. A lot of the rules are surrounding, offside and using video review, and it's become a big, more technology in the game. For example, FIFA's doing this thing where they're going to take a a body scan of all the players who are going to play. This way, when they're offside, they can tell, given that body type. I mean, so AI is going to be part of the World Cup. There's going to be a lot of technology. So FIFA's looking, like all the leagues, how do we integrate more technology? Your rule change is a good idea, but it's like really old school. It's like, oh, well, let's just have this, and maybe that would be a fun experiment. I'd love to see how that would look over time. But no traction, even though I will say it stuck with me because it was like, no, I never heard that before. It's actually a pretty good idea. Maybe because you're not a habitual viewer, you came in with fresh eyes. You're like, wait.
Like if I'm playing soccer, even like just rec league, like we're not even, I'm not a professional, but I'm just playing rec league and I'm driving towards the goalkeeper.
Right.
And I'm getting my,
you get chopped down.
Like, hey, I got a shot here. And then some dude like slide tackles me and I go head over heels and the ref calls, a penalty kick. I want to kick that thing. As long as I can get up and still breathe, I want to kick that thing. I don't want Mike to come off, come from whoever on the field or the sideline, and I got this and get out the way. Like, dude, I just got killed. I've just caught my breath. I want to kick this thing in.
Yeah.
Like, why do you get to do it? Like that's maybe it's the hockey, the with the penalty
basketball
shot and all. Yeah, you
basketball free throws.
You foul that guy, he goes to the line. Not the best free throw shooter on the team.
Right.
On technical fouls, the best free throw. But if it's just a normal foul, you have to shoot him. So that's where I guess I'm just traditional. I always thought it was like that guy got tripped and kicked and half punched and bit, and then this guy comes in and gets to kick it. Like, come on, man, that's my shot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's an interesting thing, and I do think it's funny you remember that from our last conversation because it was something that I think is interesting. It would be fun to see, how
I don't even compromise, Clemente. Do it for the first half. In the second half, you can have or overtimes. Anyone can kick the penalty kick.
But in
the first half, if it happens in the first half, the guy who gets the foul,
like in baseball, where like the manager gets a challenge, you can challenge a call or whatever. I'll
compromise. FIFA, meet me halfway. First half, that guy's got to kick the ball, whoever it is. And if it's Messi who gets tripped up, then it's or like.
I mean, generally, just to put a fine point on this, generally the attacking players kick the PKs, they're the ones that get tripped in the box anyway because they're charging towards the goal. Yeah. It's unlikely the defender would do it, though. You do have defenders who do play up the wings, but more likely it will be an attacking player that gets chopped down anyway. So it often works out, but doesn't always work.
Well, maybe next World Cup we'll see.
You could put in your petition with FIFA.
Yeah, I'm sure that will be right. It'll be right at the forefront of the paperwork they're looking through. Well, listen, you wrote the book. You've updated it. Well, factoring in, this World Cup. Talk a little bit about the book, where people can get it.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of history. I actually I didn't read the new version. I read the old one. It's not that old. Original, I should say. Yeah. And like just full of history. And I'm not what you would call your typical soccer fan. And it's just as a sports fan, I love the history of sports.
Right.
And you really covered it. Not that I've read a ton of soccer, but you covered really every aspect. And you did it in a way, like it's not a small book, but you did it in a way it's concise, and you kept it interesting. Talk about like the update, where people can buy the book and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so the book is called The World Cup: A History of the Planet's Biggest Sporting Event, 2026 edition. So that's the new title for it. And it covers every World Cup from 1930 to the present. It really has a big focus on not just the games and the players, but also the politics of the time, what was happening in the world and how that affected the game. And then, the countries it was being played in, that always has a factor in it. The new edition has 2 added chapters. One is on the 2022 World Cup, the one in Qatar with that epic final. I was there at that game, so I have a lot of firsthand reporting in there. So I have that in the book. And then I have a chapter that pretty much previews this World Cup. I have a pretty funny anecdote of the FIFA president this past summer during an encounter the media had with him at Trump Tower in New York, and I was there for it. So it's got some funny anecdotes in there about that meeting, which was a little unusual. And that was right on the eve of the Club World Cup that I told you about last July in New York. So it's got some firsthand reporting in it. A lot of stuff has happened in the last 4 years, of course, soccer-wise, that really matters. And there's a bit of a preview on the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. I couldn't preview all the countries, of course, because we didn't know the countries that were going to qualify. So I was in the same predicament. Only my deadline was much sooner than Panini's. So that's what the book is really about. You can get it on Amazon. It's currently in pre-sale. The book comes out March 19th.
Yeah.
The World Cup is June 11th. So bit of a buffer. But if you want to order it now on Amazon, you can. You can do a search, look it up, order it, and you'll get it in the mail on March 19th, right around St. Patrick's Day. And it's a good book as a gift for Father's Day. If you want to read about the World Cup, if you're a collector, for example, and you don't know who to collect or why you should collect somebody, reading a little history of the game might help, and also watching the World Cup and reading a few chapters of the last few World Cups heading into it gives you a little bit of some groundwork. And like you said, the book is concise because, I could have written a 2,000-page book, but nobody wants that, right? So, the goal was to keep it as tight as possible. Yeah. We're covering almost 100 years here.
Well, kudos, because you did a great job. And I like, we forget that's what happens in life affects what happens in sports, right? And how some of these wars and you mentioned like politics and wars and countries who really can't stand each other would want to wipe each other off of the earth at the time. Yes. How that played into the tournament field and where games could be played or not played, or hey, if they're here, we're not going to be, that sort of thing. And sometimes we don't always think about that aspect. And just what we're seeing today with the Olympics about to happen in the Winter Olympics for hockey, and there's not going to be a Russian entry into the ice hockey competition, right? And it's 2026, right? This isn't old school war, this is modern day, and it's still things like that still are happening. So, and I'm a history guy. I'm a history of sports. I'm a world history guy. And so when those two kind of meld or go hand in hand, I find it very interesting. Not that you like controversy or bad things, but it is part of the fabric of how we're here where we are today, like it or not. And I love learning about it. And like they say, you learn about, that's how we avoid future stuff, maybe from mistakes in the past. Sometimes we do learn that, and in other instances we repeat those. But I love learning about that. And then when you encompass sports in there as well, I love it even more so, because it's like two check boxes for me. And like I said, this is not, I'm not a salesman, but the way you did it and the way you wrote it, you're very talented, and you made it interesting. Whether you're a diehard soccer fan or a casual, which I would, describe myself as, it was just very enthralling and interesting. I kept turning pages and reading more and more. And, it's important. It's important to, we're here because of what happened before we got here. I think all that stuff is important to know, and or at least to me.
The goal is to always make the book accessible to everybody. But, even for myself, someone who's watched the game for decades, just being able to peel back a little bit, do some research, learn things along the way, and then share them with other people. That's really what motivates me. Ultimately, I like to tell stories. That's why I write magazine stories. That's why I write newspaper stories. I work for various websites. I like to write books because I like to look at a story, find stories, and then tell these stories to other people, whether it's about sports or the hobby or politics or whatever it is, religion. These things all matter to us. And I agree, the World Cup is one of those events like the Olympics where it's international, encompasses lots of different cultures and nationalities. And ultimately, it does reflect what's happening in the world. Like you mentioned, the hockey tournament not having Russia. This has happened before in history. It'll happen again. And you're right. This is not about some far off place. We're talking about the present. And, the World Cup doesn't have any political tensions at the moment, but you never know what can happen in the world. We live in times where wars can break out at any moment. So it's a great guidebook. If you're going to this World Cup, I'll leave you with this. If you're going into this World Cup this summer without ever really watching the World Cup or experiencing it, the book is really a great guide to say, you know what, let me do a little cramming before the final exam. Let me do a little reading on what's all the craziness about.
And get your juices flowing, get you hyped up for
exactly. And March is a good time. March is about the time the hype will start building, and as we get closer and closer, the hype is already building. It's been building for years now, but now that we're really in the same calendar year as the World Cup, I think the hype is here.
Yeah, when you can start counting down days in the double and single digits, you're close.
Yeah, for sure.
That's huge, and having it here in our home country, even cooler, right? In various cities, and Canada's not that far away. I don't know if I'm going to get to go, especially with all this price.
Yeah,
but like I'm not super far. I never say never. I'm going to leave the door open, but Toronto's not too far from me. I'm in Syracuse, but I'm from New York City. That's only 230, 40 miles from where I am that way. I love Boston. I just went there for the first time in September, believe it or not, and great city. So I wouldn't rule that off the table either. So maybe, I know my son would like, I know we talked last time, my son would like to go if we can. And so I'm not closing that door. We'll see what's available and where, and how the dates might work and times. But if you get a chance to go, right, you don't get the World Cup all the time, obviously, and you don't get the World Cup in general. It's every 4 years, and so when it's in your country, who knows when you'll get it back again. So when it's there, you got to try to get there if you can. I mean, you went to Qatar to go see the world, right, and now it's right in our backyard, so to speak. So if you get a chance to go, I and it's an event. It's right. It's the Super Bowl. We talk about Super Bowl, right, in the NFL, right? People go to that event that aren't even football, like American football fans. It's an event.
It's a cultural event.
I think the world. Yeah, I think the World Cup is the same as that. Some people might be shaking their head. I don't really care, but it's the proof's in the pudding, right? It's called the World Cup, So and here it is on our home soil in Canada and Mexico. Some opportunities to, even if you make a vacation inside the trip to see some soccer be as well. There's always that aspect. So Clemente, I appreciate you dropping some knowledge on me and those listening. Give out again, if you want to plug where people can get the book, where people can see what you're writing and doing, and anything. Take your time. Website, the floor is yours to give out that information. I'll also put this in the show notes for you, episode notes as well. So even if they don't catch it verbally, they can catch it in the show notes. But go ahead.
Yeah. I think I did send you this stuff earlier, but I can be found on Twitter or X at Clemente Lisi. And then I also write for various hobby publications, including Sports Collectors Digest. You can find my stuff there. I also write for puckjunk.com. I also am a regular on Sal Barry's podcast. Hi, Sal. And then I also have my own Substack where I write about soccer at planetsoccer.substack.com. And, you can hit me up on all these platforms. And of course, the book is available at Bloomsbury Publishing. It's also available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. I love to say that.
There you go. And listen, I promise there won't be through. Well, we're going to do a post World Cup sort of recap and how it went, and maybe what happened with those tickets, and see how this all plays out, and kind of do a post game, if you will. I know it's more than one. Post World Cup sort of recap, and then even after that, I promise not to make it 3 years. Between appearances.
I will close it off with this by saying that the World Cup final is July 19th. It is in New York. It is also the same weekend as Fanatics Fest, so I'll probably try to be at both the final and Fanatics Fest. And then 2 weeks later, at the end of July, is the National in Chicago. I'll be there as well. I think I'm going to have a really busy July, but it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no doubt. And you do a great job covering it and getting that information out to everybody who maybe can't always as well. So Clemente, always appreciate it. Love chopping it up with you. Thanks as always.
Thank you.
Honestly, one of my favorite dudes in the hobby. I'm not going to be shy away from saying that. Love Clemente. And glad he can bring his knowledge and expertise to this show, especially with soccer, something I'm not as well versed on, obviously. But always love, and no matter what we're talking about, if I see him in person and we're talking about life, it doesn't matter. Just enjoy chopping it up with him. So we're going to hear from our Hobby is the People announcer of the week and kind of wrap up today's episode. We went a little bit longer, but I don't like to cut anything out, so we did it.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
This is King NASCAR from the NASCAR Radio Podcast. And remember, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.